of Sports Live. This is another session of Sports Live. We are now live and we have a special guest today, Manu from the Royal Belgian Federation. I think you're ranked, #1 in the world in terms of federation, and obviously everybody looks at what you guys are doing. And I think the session today, Manu, is to really, without everybody listening, maybe some, to hear some of the great, I would say, decision you took with regards to innovation and some of the actions and the leadership you created. And also I want you to maybe share some of specific examples of technologies and platforms I know that you have taken in terms of fan engagement, monetization, sponsorship, anything that could be of an interest to, this, I would say, special time. In Hype, our business is to talk on a daily basis to brands, to clubs, to federations, to teams, and obviously to startups, and to see how we can put them together. Obviously invest in some of them. But I think recently what we see is that everybody's looking for, how innovation can help them move to the next level, whether it's stuff they're going to put in the stadium when the fans are allowed back, and the new season will start, whether it's about how they can monetize their assets better. So I would like really for you in this short session to really help us understand what you've done. But maybe to start with, this is one-on-one, and I love this medium because it's personal, and for some in a few minutes, maybe we'll forget that this is live and other people are watching. But can you share a little bit about you? How did you get to this, dream job?
Yeah, thanks, Amir. Yeah, it sure is a dream job. Everybody wants to be in sports. My background is that I'm one part of myself is that I'm an ex top athlete. I used to be a field hockey player, goalkeeper for many years. Played in the national team for almost 100 games. I've been to the London Olympics, and I've been able to move into the sports industry. First, I have a background in broadcasting. For 1 year, I worked at the VRT, which is the public broadcaster in Belgium. I worked for 6 years in advertising, and then everything sort of came together, the broadcasting, the advertising. I moved to a telco company called Telenet, where I was responsible for the sports, the pay TV sports package called Play Sports. Where I was responsible for the channels we launched, the sponsorship we did in sports, and also everything linked to marketing and advertising. And then I moved to the Royal Belgian FA, where everything sort of came together. Being an ex-athlete helps, having been in broadcasting helps, having a background in sponsorship and marketing also helps. And so yeah, it's a bit of a dream job for me now, being on the job for 18 months almost.
Great stuff. So let's start with, how did you cope with, COVID-19 came? What's happened? How did you manage? What were the first decision you took?
It was a very strange situation. So we had a trip planned to Qatar with our Red Devils in March, and until very, very short before the trip, we always thought that we were going to go because there was something called COVID-19, but we weren't sure if it was like a little flu or it was something very serious. But when the trip got cancelled, I think then everybody at the FA also understood that this was really serious business. And I think the first things we did was manage also our clubs, because we are a federation. So we're not only in charge of the professional clubs, but also all the amateur and grassroots clubs. So quite quickly we decided to help those clubs out with a financial package. That was very important for them, because having no games, no ticketing revenue, or no drinks or catering revenue was really also for amateur clubs. It's one of their main resources. Sponsorship was also difficult because they have a lot of local sponsors who were hit very hard by that. So that was one of the first things we did. And then, of course, talking to the league as well about whether or not to cancel the competition, stop the league, or continue. We also had to then manage the UEFA because we were the first, actually, I think one of the first leagues that decided to stop the competition, which UEFA at first wasn't really happy about. So that was, I think, the first things we did quite quickly in this situation.
There is a phone in the background. Is it in your end?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's a toy of my daughter's, which is I don't know, mysteriously making a sound.
I thought maybe it's in my ears with the age. So yeah.
So yeah, we had a lot of things on our plate, especially in communication, because the press was eager to know what's happening with the competition. There was a lot of pressure from UEFA, cancel competition or not, because it has a lot of impact. A lot of impact. I'm sorry, this toy is just magically making noise. There's no one here. So there's a lot of consequences to stopping the league, because what do you do with European tickets? Who's going to be champion? Who's going to be relegated? So up until now, it's still a legal battle in Belgium. So it's really annoying, the COVID and this sound as well. So
you want to take care
hang
of it?
on. Yeah, I'm gonna put it away because yeah. There's really no one in this house.
Him come back. Okay.
Yes, here I am. Yeah, so there was a lot of things to deal with, especially in communication at first, and now as well with we're also very eager to know what's going to happen, because in September we have the Nations League that's going to kick off. So our Red Devils are going to play in the Nations League. We have 5 home games in our national stadium. Can we have fans or not? We also have the women playing. We had a big campaign lined up to have a full house with a very important qualifying game for our women's national team. We also don't know if we're going to be able to do it. So there's the organization of the events, but also a lot of campaigning we had lined up, and we just don't know if we will be able to do something with it. So it's still a bit of a sort of an uncertain phase now. And now in Belgium, situation is again getting a bit worse. So we're quite curious to see how it will evolve, and if we will be able to get some fans in the stadium in September when we kick off the Nations League.
Yeah, I think everyone is sharing more or less the same uncertainty and unclarity in terms of the future. But there are usually different types of organizations. The ones that are in those type of cases are holding, putting everything on hold. Let's see what's happening. But you were quite active, especially in the innovation side. So maybe you want to share some of the actions you took.
Yeah, well, so we took advantage also of this time, because there's a lot of uncertainty, but there's also a lot of things not happening, which gives us room and space to do other stuff. So we one of the biggest projects we'll have in the next couple of years is to develop a new digital platform. Because in the past there's been some investments in digital, but last year's was not enough, and so we want to sort of close the gap with the outside world, with the industry, and because we were sort of developing that digital platform, we're also quite keen to see what is the new innovative stuff that's happening out there. So we were very happy to be in touch with you guys, and through this program, actually, which I wasn't sure what to expect, because it's the first time I was in such an accelerator program. It's been very, very interesting for me and for us as an organization to just see what startups are doing right now, because they sort of have the finger at the pulse of, they're very agile, small organizations with a lot of times bright ideas and wanted to make something, and a lot of times it's very, very practical in use, and it can be directly used. So there's a couple of very good examples in there. So we're discussing with a couple of those very concretely already. Pilots. What can we do? So there's one which is called Full Venue, which should help us to better sell tickets, if we can sell tickets again, of course, which will really help to target much better. They're going to look at all the ticketing data that we have, and try to analyze how we can optimize our marketing campaigns and better target and better sell more tickets. So in the end, it's also about money, of course. There's also other examples. There's a very practical one. There's one plan which which helps venues to calculate the optimum capacity of a stadium. So we know we need to have bubbles, we need to have 1.5 meters distance in every way. So they calculate, they look at your stadium plan, they calculate for you what's the most optimum seating plan. They also think about, exit and income, because of course, if you can have 10,000 people in a stadium of 40,000, it's something. You can sort of put them in different areas, but if they all come at the same time at the gates, you have a problem again. So they also help you to do that. So that's really practical examples of stuff that can help federations and clubs to cope with this situation, because we know we're going to have to cope with it. We won't have full stadiums very quickly, I think. So we need to look for other stuff. And again, also, if there's not enough fans, if we cannot have a lot of fans in the stadium, how can we then optimize people being at home wanting to be in a stadium? How can we give them the best possible experience, being in front of a TV, but giving them all sorts of other tools to better be able to interact with each other, or be able to have a sort of almost live experience. So there's also a couple of examples there. There's this very simple but bright idea of Hear Me Cheer. It's an app where you can cheer for your team, so that your cheers that you will say through your mobile phone will come through the speakers in the stadium, and this will also give another sort of atmosphere for the players, and it's a good alternative to the sort of general sound that you hear now on the Premier League. The Esports sound, which is better than nothing. But this is even better because this is real people cheering for their team. So that's also the things we're thinking about now, because we know we have this Nations League campaign in September, which is going to start. And usually we have a marketing campaign to sell tickets, but now we'll have a completely different marketing campaign. Now we're going to have a sort of a campaign to incentivize people to interact with us and to win a sort of a home party where they will, from sponsors can give goodies. And we have a beer sponsor, obviously, ABI with Jupiler, the Belgian local brand, who can give beer. There's crisps. We also have analysts, normally the TV pundits, who will also then go to the houses of people to give them a sort of a pre-match analysis and during the halftime and after the game. And we're also very much collaborating with the broadcasting partners, because we don't want them to film an empty stadium. So we're looking at all kinds of technologies that are available on the market, which also see in La Liga or in the Premier League, to have a sort of a virtual stadium maybe, and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot that we want to do to at least give people something to cheer about, because in these times you also need sports. Can you sort of elevate people, give some euphoria and some joy in the lives of people? So we'll try to maximize that, because we have these live events. We have this top team, which is almost 2 years now ranked number 1 in the FIFA ranking, and we want to help. We're going to try to give people something back, and that's what we're trying to achieve. And thanks to all this technology, we might be able to do that. So that's why this Hype program was also so interesting, because we're at the forefront of innovation. You see a lot of stuff happening, and some things are maybe not the best for us, but there's 5-6 startups we're talking with to do a demo or a pilot, and we'll see what happens then. Maybe we can make this something permanent. We hope not the COVID-19 examples. We hope we don't have to make this permanent stuff, especially the stadium one. But others, who knows? And maybe they can then integrate into a digital platform, and we'll be able to be even more innovative than we thought we could be at first.
Absolutely, and I love the energy that comes out of you when you speak about innovation. It reminds me, I had a conversation about 2 weeks ago with one of the leading Esports platform, and I asked him, what is your vision? And he said, our vision is to be the number 1 Esports platform in the world. And then I asked him, what is your innovation strategy then? He said, no, with innovation, we are first followers.
Okay.
We are seeing what other people have done, and then we tried. And I invited him to consider that to have a vision of being the number 1 esports platform, this has to have a very strong innovation strategy where they are becoming the place, the focal point for innovation in their space. So not only the world knows, but also the new innovation, the startups know that that should be the first place to go, especially in esports, but in any, I would say, vertical in the sport universe. Now, what is your strategy in terms of innovation? How, you mentioned about building this digital platform. How do you see innovation as an organization, as a federation?
I would have to be very honest with you.
Add one thing.
Yeah.
When I speak to federation and clubs, some of them are saying, yeah, we are very innovative. We have 15 startups knocking our doors every week, and then we choose. And what we've done here in this program, which you're part of, we said, let's reverse it. Let's invite the clubs, the federation, to share their challenges. And then we went to about 1,000 startups and found those solutions. So I don't know if you can also elaborate on this experience as part of the strategy.
Well, I must be very honest with you. So we didn't really have an innovation strategy. So we hardly had a digital strategy. So that I would say the last year we've taken huge strides to sort of close the gap, but we still have a lot of ground to cover. So I would say that our biggest ambition is to build a digital platform that serves our clubs, our players, and our fans in the best possible way. That's, let's say, the high ambition that we have. And I would say that innovation comes in where we can easily plug in stuff that creates added value to those fans, players, coaches that are in there. In terms of strategy for the innovation, there was none at the Royal Belgian FA. I would say that this high program came as a sort of a gift out of heaven, because it's helped us to sort of open our eyes and open our scope and look at a much bigger scope and context. Being in this program with other big clubs like Paris Saint-Germain, or even in other sports, Tennis Australia or Golden State Warriors, it's also refreshing to look at other examples from other sports and see how it can maybe create some enthusiasm and energy to look at other stuff. So also this reverse approach I like very much, because when you're in sports, in football, and especially when you're sort of the #1 federation in Belgium and one of the leading sports teams in Europe, I would say, then you have a lot of people knocking on your door. Yeah. But it's really difficult to see which ones are good and which ones are maybe not so interesting. It takes a lot of time and energy to do that. The reverse approach that we have here in this high program is that you sort of sit back, you get a full scope of maybe 20 startups that are just pitching to you. You pick, you choose, and then you invest the time that you want to invest in it. And so we chose six startups, and it's true, it takes some time to talk to all of them and to get to the point where you see, is this interesting or not for us? But at a certain point, you see there's 3 or 4 you want to go further with. You see if you can make a demo and make it work. So for me, it's quite an efficient approach. And if you guys do another round of this, I'd be very happy to be on board again, because it's interesting. Even if it doesn't lead to anything, it leads to opening your scope, opening up to ideas. And I think for football federations especially, who are sort of a monopolist, because football is the biggest sport, and in your country most of the times the football federation is the #1 federation. You tend to get lazy because you're the #1 and you compare yourself to other federations. Whereas I think football federations should look at a much bigger scope and look at the full entertainment industry. I mean, Netflix is a competitor of ours. Festivals, music festivals, esports, it's all competitors of ours. So if we want to stay at the forefront and want to continue to be leading, I think we need to invest a lot into innovation to be able to compete with this full scope in entertainment industry that's in there.
Absolutely, and thank you for the kind words about the program. Can I, looking at the next season, with all the uncertainty around us, what can you share? Are the game plans? What are your, I would say, B plans? What is your scope? And also, is there, I would say, innovation platforms that you are looking at to support you in getting back into the new season?
Yeah, it's a difficult question because I think sort of this season will be cut in half already. I mean, I think before December, I don't think we will have a full-fledged season. Even so, for us as a federation, we'll have some qualifiers to play, Nations League to play, probably without any fans. Probably for the clubs, that's even a bigger nightmare than for us because they rely on ticketing and a lot to get their revenues in. So I think there's a very, very big challenge, especially for clubs, is to reinvent themselves and to see how they can diversify their revenue, their income. Because if they will rely on ticketing and hospitality, it will be very difficult. Transfer prices will drop as well, so that's another income stream for them that will also drop. So if they do nothing, I think a lot of clubs will go bankrupt. So I think they will need to reinvent themselves. And I think innovation can help to some extent to look how to better, how to monetize differently. And I think we're also trying to do that as well. We've started with a plan with this digital platform. We're also have a big project in data, which has the ambition to be able over time to get more revenues out of data, because the data has an intrinsic value. You create a reach for a sponsor, which is less dependent to the results on the field. If you look at old school sport sponsorship, you play well, you get a lot of reach, you get a lot of money. If you don't play well, they get not the same reach and you get less money. Simple equation. So if you want to change that equation, you have to look at other ways to monetize, and that's exactly what we're doing. So we're building a database. We're enriching that database with all possible data points that we get, in order to be interesting for sponsors. If you can go to a car manufacturer, so car sponsor, car brand, and you can say that you can communicate directly to a target group that is really interesting for them, not maybe the 100 or 200 or 300 or 400,000 people, but a very segmented target group which will create ROI for them, then I think you have a good chance to get their sponsorship budgets, especially in these times where the tangible revenues, the real ROI will help. So I think in terms of innovation and looking at that, I think data and everyone who can help you get a better view on your data will have a good chance of helping football federations and football clubs to maybe dig into new revenue streams. And I think that's a really important one. So I think we're maybe on the verge of looking at a sort of a transformation, and maybe also a transformation in sponsorship model, especially in football. And if you're not ready for that, then maybe you're not in the best position. So I think that's where innovation and digital can really help you.
That's a good point in terms of sponsorship, because I can hear a lot of topics and questions around that. How do sponsors, everything is changing. Some of them are not happy. What's your proactive approach now? If you were like to work with, to give like, 3 or 4, I would say, guidelines in terms of addressing sponsorship now for the next couple of years, what would you, if somebody, it's a new guy joining a federation now, a new role, yeah, just getting into this position, what I would say the 3, 4, I would say, tips you can give him to look at as far as sponsorship is concerned?
Well, I've been on the other side in a telco company, so I was the one with the bag of money, investing in sponsorship. And what frustrated me also back when I was in that position is that you always get the same. If you invest in football, you get some LED boarding, some hospitality, some ticketing, and that was it. And every club had the same model. They all came with the same. So it was also, I'm going to invest in club A or club B. The only tangible thing you had was a Nielsen report, which showed you how much reach you got with one or the other. And I was frustrated about that. And that's also why we constructed a bit of a different strategy at the Royal Belgian FA, more forward-looking. And actually now, if you look at how sponsorship will be evolving in the next 2 or 3 years, I think that's the model you have to look at. if you want to sell sponsorship still based on LED boarding and hospitality, you will find it very difficult to get the budgets from the brands, because sponsorship in a company is a lot of times a sort of a hobby of the CEO, which had a bag of money and he said, look, yeah, I'm interested in Formula One, do something in Formula One. But you see that more and more now that the marketing budgets are getting cut a bit. The first victim will probably be sponsorship, unless the sponsorship manager can prove that he gets tangible ROI. So he will be looking for that much more than simple reach or hospitality. They will be looking for what value can you bring to my company? What can you really help me in sales if that's a problem that he has? So I think you will need to listen to the sponsorship manager, hear his marketing problems and find a solution for that. And the best possible tools you will be able to have then is, of course, a big reach, on social media, having a big reach. But also if you have a very powerful tool like a digital platform where you have a lot of people coming on a regular basis, that's going to help as well. So in my view, and we will be investing in that digital platform, is to build direct-to-consumer relationships ourselves with a big database, which will enable us to as I said, to get a very segmented approach and be able to deliver real value to them. Another one, which is also, I think, worth investing in, is trying to create your own, do more of your own content and create branded content, because we as a Royal Belgian FA, I think we're probably the biggest influencer in Belgium with the Red Devils, of course, which is the biggest, probably the biggest influencer on Instagram in Belgium. This enables us to also to create reach, and by that reach, getting in touch with people. And if we can then collect the data from that people, that's, I think, when the wheel will start turning, and when you will have some magic happening. And if you can come with that kind of story to a sponsor, I think you'll have more chance to getting the budgets in than going again with the same as always, some LED boarding and some hospitality and ticketing. I don't think you stand a big chance.
Wow, I think this is very useful for anybody in the space, specifically around sponsorship. I spoke to a federation about 6 months ago, one federation, and they shared very openly that at the moment they are managing their database on Excel sheets, meaning they have no CRM, no kind of digital platform at all. Now, looking like, 3-4 years ahead, yeah? If I can invite you or ask you to paint for us a winning picture, yeah? An ideal picture from what we know now about how a digital platform for federation would look like. Yeah. And you mentioned also the data and how to handle the data from all the different aspects. Yeah, and there is no, I would say, limitations of resources. Yeah? Can you help us understand how this ideal platform would look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to be in the pocket through this simple device of any football fan, and we want to become a go-to destination. And so now today, when people want to consume football, they go to media, press, they go to live scoring apps, they go to live streaming apps and stuff like that. And they will probably not go to the Royal Belgian FA website or app right now, because right now we have a lot of interesting content and we're all putting it on YouTube and on the social media platforms. So people come just for look for results, and that's it. So in ideal world, we would have every single football fan in Belgium will have this in his pocket, and every day, a couple of times, he will check it, he will look at it, because we will have this interesting content that will make us a go-to destination and enable us to create those direct-to-consumer relationships. And everybody will be able to buy his ticket in 2 clicks, will be able to buy a jersey in 2 clicks, and will be able to consume the content that's personalized and relevant to him. If he's a big fan of Eden Hazard, that's what should be in his homepage, the newest stuff on Eden Hazard. And it sort of is becoming a sort of our own media channel, and that is what I would have as an ambition for the next 2, 3, 4 years, to become that go-to platform, because that will enable us to have everything at the back of it. We'll have a lot of data people will consume on our platform. So instead of giving all our data away to Facebook or YouTube or Instagram and them collecting the data, we will start collecting the data ourselves and being able to give them a frictionless customer journey with hyper personalization. And of course, on the back of that, we will be able to monetize that. And as a federation, let's not forget it, we are a non-profit organization. Any money that we get in, we can invest in projects. And that's exactly what we're about. If we want to develop a women's football plan, we need to get funds in. We can invest directly into the women's football plan, and we can see that we can reap the benefits of it. And we can see that more girls are playing football, and that women's football is becoming bigger. So this first part is really important. If we can become that go-to destination, we can monetize it, and then we can invest in all those projects. That would be fantastic.
Good. And you mentioned data. Any other ways in the winning picture of the future? Any other uses of data?
Yeah, of course. To become a go-to destination, you will need, of course, video content, very, very exclusive video content, which we can make because we have direct access to the players behind the scenes, stuff that other media don't. I think that's very important. And then, of course, you see all those examples of fan engagement, and which are also very relevant, of course. How can you make people come back more often to your app? Gamification, probably, fantasy games, any other new ways to engage fans on a daily basis. That will, of course, help, because with the first part, and we would say the more classical part, the content, the news, it will be difficult, because then I think that the innovation will maybe give us the edge. And I don't know yet what that innovation can be. It can be in gamification, probably is something that's an interesting path to cover, and probably other ways. And that's why we're so happy that we can look at being in this hype accelerator, because suddenly we get ideas we haven't thought of. So I think it's difficult in this very quickly changing times to already look at 3 or 5 years ahead. I think we will be very happy to be able to launch this digital platform, and then try to sort of on a continuous basis every 3 to 6 months add new stuff and new features. And that's where I think innovation can help us to like I said, to give us an edge on compared to others who are maybe a more classical approach.
Excellent. Now let's talk a little bit about esports. Yeah, without a doubt, I'm recently, before the COVID, we went to raise our fund in London for investing in SportsTech, and the first question of the investors was, how can I invest in esports? And most of them doesn't know what esports is, but just sounds great and great opportunity. Now, when you're looking at esport, and we all know how big it's going to become, yeah. What's your strategy on esport? How do you see this, in terms of the years to come? What is the actions that you've taken so far?
Well, also there, being very honest, there was no esports strategy. So we knew we had to do something, but we weren't sure what we needed to do or what we had to do. Because of course esports is such a big thing. It's much more than just FIFA. It's all those other games which are much more popular. But as a federation, of course, we're not. Our job is not to do something in esports like to do a League of Legends franchise or a Counter-Strike franchise. Our stuff is football, and so we actually have renewed a partnership with a big telco company in Belgium, and they're going to help us. They're going to invest in the next 4 years a lot of money to help us develop this strategy. And I think in the end, what esports for us should be is a means to interact with target groups that we're probably missing out on. And if we could, in an ideal world, all those kids that are playing FIFA on their Xbox or PlayStation or whatever, if we can get them to play football with us in probably other ways, because maybe the 11 versus 11 game, we also need to look at other alternatives, 3 versus 3, 7-a-side, something like that. If we can get them to also complementary play football and exercise, go outside, play football, come to our federation, come to in our ecosystem, that's something that can be a real benefit to us. And what that will look like, we're still working on it because we're not sure. We're really not sure. Right now, what we're doing is what other federations classically also do. We play some games, some international games. Our players, our esports players, play against them. We stream it, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple of layers on top we still need to put on there to innovate more. But never to forget the objective that we have as a federation. As a federation, we want to develop and organize football, and so that's our mission statement. And that esports should be linked to that. We shouldn't just do esports because for the sake of it. It should help us to engage with people and maybe get them to play football. That would be the ideal world.
It reminds me when in one of those days when we were in lockdown, my older son called me and he said, "Daddy, do you want to see a FIFA game?" So I said, "Yeah, why not?" So we sat down and we were fans, viewers of other people playing FIFA. Yeah. So for the first time, and it wasn't that bad. Obviously, there was an Israeli player there also, so it helped me to be emotionally engaged. And then he told me, the difference between your generation and my generation is that your generation, your father took you to football, his father took him to football, and this is like forever, yeah, many years. In my generation, he said, my son will take me to see esports.
Yeah.
That's it. It's a new level or new, I would say, reality happening. Now, you can like it or not, but, now it takes me to the point you mentioned that for you, a winning picture will be that everybody has this mobile phone and they're, in 3 years' time, you are communicating with all the football fans in Belgium. Now, the conversation I have in my head is that in 3-4 years' time, my son is 24. The ages, the young generations, the Z generation, are living in esports. They have this screen open most of the day. This is where they consume their communication. So we need to find a way to take this and put them together.
Yeah.
In a way that will be effective, and also, looking at our visions, do we need, as the Olympic Committee is thinking about bringing esports into the Olympic Games, yeah? Do we also need to look at putting together our visions, which will not exclude this new generation? Yeah, we may like it or not, and I would say the problem is that most of the people ruling sports at the moment is old as I am, and they are not usually do not see esport as they are not they do not play esport for sure, and if they understand it, that's very, very unique. Yeah, so this is, I think, the opportunity where a proactive organization can really take the lead there and start engaging, because in the end they say that the e-sport and the traditional sport will find a way to work together. And you can see it already with Peloton and Zwift. When you bicycle, you do the bicycle, and you can do at home, and you are competing with people which are actually driving outside, and you can, it's like starting to work together. So just, a conversation about how proactive we should be. If we would like to have 30% of if we know that in 3-4 years time, 30% of your fans will be living in esport games, what are the steps we need to take today to make sure that those 30% will also have attention span and will be linked to our platform?
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think you cannot neglect this younger generation because they're the fans of tomorrow. So our esports strategy will be well, which isn't there yet, but we will be developing it. It will be exactly to try to get in touch with them and try to get a link with them emotionally to get them to engage with us, be it as a fan. That's also good if they want to also come once to a real game and buy a ticket, or as a player. And I think you're quite right, is that even myself, I just turned 40. Esports for me, it's very difficult to get a grasp on it, because I as an ex-Olympian, I would find it very strange in my world that esports will be part of the Olympic program. But in a way, we should maybe also drop off this and maybe look a bit broader and look at this younger generation. And if we want to keep engaging with them, we'll need to find a way. On the other hand, these video games, and that's also something we see, also help us, because all our big star players are in that game. And we see that the fandom is also shifting from being a club fan to more like a player fan. We've done a big piece of research with UEFA, and we've seen that, especially in those younger target groups, those young guys, these young kids, they become a fan of Eden Hazard. And when he's at Chelsea, they will buy a Chelsea jersey with his name on it. When he goes to Real Madrid, they just shift. They become sort of a fluid fan who follows the player, and is much more attracted to the big icons than to a league as itself on its own. And we also see that, and that's, I think, a problem maybe for the Belgian league they have to tackle, is that in the younger generations we see that they shift more and more from looking at the Belgian league to Premier League, La Liga, and all those competitions. Why? Because those big star players, they play in those competitions and they become more and more attracted to it, and they will maybe look less at the local competition and look more and more to the big star players in the Champions League, Premier League, and La Liga. So in a way, there's also a sort of a circle you can make. If you can get those young kids play FIFA and look at Hazard, De Bruyne, Lukaku, get to know those players through that channel and maybe not through the classical channel, this gives also some like a link to drag them in our world to the real players. So there's also an opportunity. I mean, there's a big threat, obviously, because of if we do nothing, then participation in classical football will go down, and we'll go more and more to esports or other forms of football. So we also need to adapt as a federation to that new reality.
Absolutely, and I think I can see the conversation about esports shifting as the years go by, and then it will become. I think there is nothing to stop it to be mainstream eventually. But it reminds me about 5 or 6 years ago, I was invited to meet one of the Premier League club owners in London, and he said to me that he prefers not to have Wi-Fi in the stadium because it distracts the fans from seeing the game. And I must say that it made sense when I heard it then. It just show you how shifted now. You can't imagine, now 5G and, the Wi-Fi 6, whatever, and the experience that we are having with. But I think that's the beauty of innovation and the era we live in. We are very close to completing our session. I want to ask you in the end 3 different questions. 3 people, dead or alive, Manu, that you would like to have coffee with, that are like role models for you. You as an Olympian and national hockey goalkeeper. Wow, that's a big wow. But who for you now, if you can choose anybody, dead or alive, 3 people to have coffee with, who would that be?
I think one would definitely be, that's maybe a classical answer, but Steve Jobs, because of, that's maybe more because of the marketing background I have, the way he constructed his brand and his products. It's fascinating. If you know the history and know where they came from, being bankrupt a couple of times almost, but still living as a brand, and now being one of the biggest. So I think that's certainly one of it. Otherwise, I would also look at maybe like China, like Alibaba or Tencent, the owners of those companies, to listen to them and see how they constructed a complete ecosystem through also the phone, being able to have someone pay, chat, book his trip, get an insurance, having his bank, everything in the same app or the same ecosystem. I think that would be fascinating to see, like Jack Hua, for instance. Why not to talk to him?
Wow.
And otherwise, maybe if I could get Johan Cruijff back, so the iconic player from the Netherlands, because he was always a very special view on things, on football and outside of it. And I think it's also quite refreshing because he had a very innovative and different look at football, completely different than the traditional mainstream trainers or coaches would have. So that would also be an interesting one to talk with.
So Steve Jobs, Jack Ma, and Johan Cruyff. I don't think it can go any more inspiring than that.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, it would be good if I could have a chat with all three of them.
Manu, very, I would say, insightful talk, very inspiring. I'm sure, this can give some food for thought for our, the different stakeholders around the sports universe. And I want to thank you for this conversation. Looking forward to continue creating good things together for the Belgium, the Royal Belgium Federation, but also for the whole sports ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and also thanks for the opportunity to be part of the Hype program. As I said, it was very refreshing and interesting.
Thank you very much.
All
Thank
right.
you. Bye for now.